This is Jim Nailon, liturgical guitarist. I'm going to share my arrangement of the Old Rugged Cross. I'll play through it first, then we'll go back and talk about a few things. That was pretty rough. This is still settling in. Hopefully I'll clear things up as we go through it. The song used to be under copyright. I have an earlier video where I play it, but I couldn't share the sheet music. And then I noticed recently that it's come out from under copyright and it's in the public domain now. So I can freely share the sheet music, and it's available online on my website. I think in general worship category under the hymns. So the nice thing about this is there are no bar chords. It does. My first arrangement was just the first verse. I added the second verse here as I was playing with it to make this video, and bringing the melody down in the bass at times. If you want, you could keep the melody in the bass all the way through the second verse, but I chose to kind of mix it up between the bass and then up in the upper range. So first let's talk through it. First part, there's not much. Oh, one thing to watch out for is knowing when. Oh, another thing. Originally, I always played it with strict time. I had to sing it for a funeral, a year or so ago, and I listened to an Alan Jackson version, and I see Elvis Presley actually. Also, they do it in a gospel swing, where they don't do strict time. So instead of it's so that's one thing. You can play this either way. The first verse I think sounds better in strict time, but the second verse, the one with the bass, that sounds really much better in a swing, gospel swing. But you can play it through either way. I'm gonna stick with teaching it in the gospel swing version here. So from the top. In that measure 5 on the start of the, or 6 at the start of the second line on that D chord, you'll notice up until now we've been doing 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2, and so it's always a quarter note on the first beat. Occasionally I throw in an eighth note in that first beat, and when I do that I give you an eighth note rest up in the melody to help you recognize up in the sheet music, the notation part, you'll see an eighth note rest up there to help you recognize the timing on that. So that measure 6 is 1 and 2, 1 and 2 and 3. Actually, that was 1 and 2 and 3, and then 1 and 2 and 3. So sometimes you have to kind of watch to see. Another measure where I put the eighth note in is measure 12 in the middle of the third line there on that C chord. So if you look at my sheet music, I've gone through and put yellow highlighter on the parts where I have the eighth notes to remind me to wake up and throw that extra note in there quicker. I think that's half my trouble with this one, is that I've altered it from the original that I used to do. So let's see. When I played through it in measure 4, measure 4, I missed the slur there. I did. So that's going into that measure, or measure 5, going into measure 6. And then thirds over a drone D bass, 1 and 2 and 3, and then 1, 2 and 3 and 1. And that last measure of the second line is 1 and 2, 3 and... So if you're reading tablature, it's kind of tricky to to spot all these things, but the notation clears it up a little better. So down to the third line. 1, 2, and 1. Now, so that's the measure that has 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3 and 1 and no 1, 2 and 3. So I give you on that we're in the fourth line of the first page, measure 14. So when you hit that last eighth note in that first measure, that open D, your hand has to jump up to get these thirds up here on the 8th fret of the first string and the 10th fret of the second string. And then a G drone. And then into the G chord. Now when you go into this G chord, to keep a legato, because you're coming off this third here, I finger it this way. I just bring my first finger down so that I don't have to change anything and I don't lose a legato. And then I bring my wrist up and bring my second finger over to grab the G bass. And then I have to release it on beat 3 to go to a more traditional G place. Get hit that hammer on, then a G. Okay, second page. Now I finger this 1, 1. So you're sliding on the first finger, then going to the top of the page. You're up on this D chord here on the 5th fret. I gotta fix the tablature there. And then bring these thirds down. And then here you're going to do a G with the second finger on the bass and your 4th finger on the 1st string. So you can get this riff that, you know, I grew up Southern Baptist and used to be a choir director in the little church when I was in high school. So I'm real familiar with this. I know it's on page 93 of the old Southern Baptist hymnal that I grew up with. And you want to get, this is one of the voice lines from I think the alto or the tenor part. And then second line there on that second page, C. And then bring this bass run down to the G over the B. So that's measure 23. And then measure 24 is G. And then in that last measure, measure 25, this one, 1, 2, as you hit that open G, actually all those notes are open, the first 2 notes, and so you have plenty of time to bring your hand up to the 7th fret into what looks like a D chord, but that's actually a G up here. And then change that into like a D7 chord, which makes it a G7. You're droning this D on the 3rd string, and then down to a regular C chord. And again, you have the first beat is in 8th notes. 1 and 2 and 3, and that's another one of the old alto lines. And then when you, last measure of the 3rd line, when you hit the open 3rd string, jump up to the 8th and 10th fret for this 3rd, and then back into that G chord, which looks like a D chord on the 7th fret. Reach up and grab this with your little finger up here on the 10th fret, and then when you have the open bass string, you can, on the D, that last 8th note, run up those thirds, and then back to a G. And again, we're going to finger this G with the first finger on the 1st string and the 2nd finger on the 6th string. And then lift it off. So that's the first verse. Now we're going to bring the melody down to the bass. So we're going to go. If you're not very good at using your little finger, you're going to get good at it with this one. So you got to hold that in that first measure on page 3. That the melody is the D, and then you hit the low G. But you want to let that note ring all the way through. It's only an 8th note there, but that should ring through the measure. So you're playing these other notes 1, while you're still holding this finger down, okay, and letting that note ring. Then hammer on the fourth string, a C chord, and hold the C bass down, same as we did before. So I'm keeping this finger down. I'm not lifting that bass up after I make that hammer on. And then there's the bass. Then a little triplet hammer on the fourth string. Open, second fret, third fret, and then fourth fret with your third finger. So. Sounds like a nice little flat picking riff, doesn't it? It's going into measure 38 with that triplet. And I try and do a lot of this with my thumb on the right hand. And then leaning into the end of that last, the second line there on page 3. We're doing thirds on the second and third string, but instead of playing it with our first and second fingers, you're going to play it with your second and third strings. Third fingers, second and third fingers. And then dig in and get that slide and try and give it a little vibrato as you get up there. So let's talk through that. Second and third finger, open, second, third finger, and then slide on them. That may take a little practice to get some strength for that. And then slide all those three. You got your first finger, slide it down, slide the whole chord shape down 1 fret, and then open first, and then bring it back up. And then you're going to change to this first finger on the third fret of the second string, second finger on the fourth fret of the third string, and third finger on the fifth fret of the fifth string. And you're going to slide on those three, slide that whole thing up, that whole chord shape up, and then quickly jump down to a C over E. So you got the bass run going. And you got the melody line going. So everything's sliding up, real gospel-y. Little finger reaches down and grabs that fourth fret of the, well, you're holding the C chord, fourth fret of the second string. And then to a D chord. And here it's in eighth, 1 and 2 and 3. And then the beat 3 is a glissando. From the 3rd fret to the 10th fret on the second string. To get that, you have to have good calluses and be able to really dig in. Then back to that G with the awkward fingering there, with the first finger on the first string and second finger on the sixth string. Off and do this, a slide, a double slide here in sixths on the second and fourth strings. back to melody in the bass. 4th fret of the 4th string, open 3rd string. It's a D chord, but all you need is your 1st finger on the 2nd fret of the 3rd string and your 2nd finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string. You're going to use the open E here. Excuse me. And then the G. Sorry. And on that G chord, you're going to you've got the 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 in that measure. So and if you want, you can even give a little glissando on the beat 4, so it would sound to get fancy. And then melody in the bass again. Open 3rd string, 4th fret of the 4th string to a C chord. And again, leave that C bass. It's not the melody. The melody notes the E, so hit that nice and hard. But let that bass run through. And then again, slide up to the 7th fret, to this D, the G7, just like we did before. Same as we did in the 1st verse here. And slide up. Now we're going to do a little kind of a lead guitar kind of riff. So let's go back to measure 61. The last 2 beats, you just jumped up to, or the last beat, 2 8th notes, you jumped up to that 3rd way up on the 8th and 10th fret. Drop into that G chord on the 7th fret. Release the chord. Bring your 1st finger back to the 5th fret. Do that hammer on, pull off. And then your little finger gets the 8th fret of the 2nd string, and your 3rd finger gets the 7th fret of the 3rd string. And then quickly, just jump to a D chord. So you're going to hit the bass and the melody, then slide on your 3rd finger from the 3rd to the 5th fret. 1st finger comes over, grabs the 3rd fret of the 1st string, then slide again on your 3rd finger from the 5th to the 7th. 1st finger gets the 5th fret. So that, if that's too much for you, just play it the same way you did in the 1st verse. Or maybe you can put the either way, you're going to go back and resolve it just like we did with this strange G chord with your 1st finger on the 1st finger on the 1st string, 2nd finger on the 6th string. Then the ending, nice hard hammer on the C, then slide up and bring those 6ths down. Then this D chord, D over F sharp. So your Third finger on the fourth fret of the fourth string. First finger on the second fret of the third string. Second finger on the third fret of the second string. Then open. So it's, you have an open third and an open first string, but your third finger is still sitting there on the D on the third fret of the second string. And then you grab that A on the second fret of the third string. So you want to bring those bass notes out. A little bit of a hold right there on that note. And then to the C chord and a retard. Then on that last chord you want to arpeggiate it. So that ending would be last line, slowly. Pause and then retard. And on that last chord I don't strum the whole G chord. I with my thumb I go G, D, and then arpeggiate those. Whew. Okay. Well, that's it. And again, I apologize for the initial recording being so rough, but I don't know if I'm going to get it any better today. So I'm going to work with this video. That's all I have on this one, I think. Now, it's not in the Catholic hymnal. For my Protestant friends out there, you'll enjoy it. Now, oh, there are some really gorgeous guitar versions of this in a drop D tuning. There's two different players that play it in drop D, and they're both just fantastic. Now, they know what to do as far as their sound effects and everything to make the guitar sound like $1,000,000. I don't know how to do that, and I've lost half my hearing, all my hearing above 6K anyway, so I can't tell how to do that kind of fancy sound stuff. But anyway, that's I would look those up if you're. The advantage in this one is, now when I sing it, I put a capo on the second fret, and that brings the high note up to about a D. For me, I can hit that as a baritone. If you're a tenor, you might want to even try it, the capo maybe on the fourth fret or so. But it still keeps it in the congregational range, and you don't have to retune your guitar. Whereas if you're playing one of those lovely versions with the drop D, that's only good as a solo piece. You know, if you're playing guitar at church and during a service, you don't have time to switch into open tunings or things like that. The best we can do is play with a capo, and rarely I'll even sometimes do a drop D tuning, but most of the time I just stay in standard tuning and make everything work. It doesn't upset anybody and distract anybody. So, but yeah, if you're just a guitar player looking for a solo version of O Rugged Cross, and especially if you're comfortable in drop D, I would check those out because they are fantastic. They really are gorgeous. But this is more of a utilitarian thing, and I spiced it up with that second verse. So that's all I have on this. I pray God blesses your playing, and I wish you, look for more guitar arrangements on liturgicalguitarist.com, and I wish you peace.